Today is March 24th, 2025. For most of the world, it's just another Monday, another regular day. But for myself and people like me, today is a very significant day. Why? Because today marks 10 years since the release of FromSoftware's Bloodborne. Bloodborne is my favorite video game of all time, and today is the 10-year anniversary. It's a cause for celebration, and today I want to speak about why Bloodborne is my favorite video game of all time, and why, if you've never played it, you absolutely should. Hello, I'm Terrelle. Welcome to the Escapism channel. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on future gaming videos like this. Now, before I begin, I just want to give a little disclaimer. There may be mild spoilers in this video, but I will try and keep them to a minimum because if you've never played Bloodborne before, I want to try and preserve as much of the experience for you as possible so that you can watch this video and go and play the game and still get a great experience, and an experience that's not completely spoiled for you. The other thing I want to quickly mention is the gameplay you are watching was captured by myself today, but my most recent save in Bloodborne was towards the beginning of another New Game Plus save, so because of that, I don't have access to many of the different areas in the game to show it off in gameplay footage, but that actually works hand in hand with the fact that I don't want to spoil this game, so all the gameplay in this video is just from the beginning areas of the game, so it won't actually spoil much of the game for you if you've never played it before. Now, there are many reasons why Bloodborne is my favorite video game of all time, but before I start to speak about some of those reasons, I'm going to just tell you how I discovered Bloodborne. Now, I was a fan of FromSoftware's Souls games by the time Bloodborne released. I had played some of Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, although I didn't really enjoy Dark Souls 2 upon release and bounced off it quite quickly. But it was around 2014, which was the same year that Dark Souls 2 came out, that a trailer leaked online that was called Project Beast. Now, I remember this quite distinctly. Now, in this trailer, you got gameplay footage, leaked gameplay footage of a very dark and gothic looking game that seemed to imply that there was like monsters and beasts and werewolves, etc. And it looked so different from what Dark Souls was, and so intriguing and so unique, that it had this allure that immediately drew my attention and many others' attention to it. And it was like, what is Project Beast? It's like, this is FromSoftware's next title, but what is it? And that immediately created a sense of intrigue within me that lasted right throughout until the game's release and its reveal, of course. Now, there was distinct elements within that trailer, like I said, that stood out to me, like the dark atmosphere, the gothic nature of it, and the fact that we were getting a game that seemingly had werewolves in it and other beasts, and that was just so enticing. Now, the game was eventually revealed to be called Bloodborne, and from that moment it shot up my list of most anticipated games. Fast forward to March 2015, I was working in Game, which, if you don't know, is a UK retailer for video games, and I remember the launch of that game. I worked the launch of that game, and I bought the limited edition of the game back then, and I'm so happy that I did, because back then I didn't realize this game would become my favorite game of all time, but now that it has, I'm glad I have a limited edition of the game in my collection. Now, the experience of playing this game for the first time alongside the world at launch was a special one. It's something that has kind of happened. It's a tradition with FromSoftware games almost, where it's the sense of discovery. A whole community of gamers playing the game at once with lots to discover, lots of lore to uncover, and you uncover all those details and information with everyone else, and you can go online and you can learn new things from what other people have discovered. That communal element of FromSoftware games, I think, is a really special thing, a real aspect of gaming that I think feels from a bygone era, from the 90s and from that period pre-internet, where you would play a game maybe and go to the school playground and discuss with a friend and discover new things, or you'd buy a strategy guide to discover new things. It just took me back to that time where word of mouth was the primary source of discovering secrets about a game and new elements that were kind of hidden or obscured. Now, when comparing the gameplay of Bloodborne to the Souls games that came before it, you could describe it as the same but different. The DNA of the Souls formula that FromSoftware established with those earlier games is present within Bloodborne, but they added some different mechanics to the game to make it feel unique and fresh. And at that time in 2015, it was the most unique iteration of that formula, and that made it immediately appealing. And I think it was also a reason that brought on and a lot more fans or different fans to the franchise and to that game design because of the different playstyle that it encouraged. And what that playstyle was a faster pace with a bigger emphasis on aggressive play. And how that works in this game is essentially when you take damage in Bloodborne, you have a short window of time where if you can attack an enemy and land some attacks, you will regain the health that you lost. And because of that, that makes you want to play on the offensive. And even in certain boss battles in the game, you really do have to take that offensive approach in order to make it through the battle. Your health potions don't replenish when you respawn, so this is another aspect of the game design that makes you think twice about just using whatever health potions you have on you. So if there is an opportunity where you've just lost a big chunk of health, but you could regain half of it back by being on the offense and making a few hits on the boss, you'll want to take that chance. And that aspect of the game design not only made Bloodborne very unique, but for me, I prefer it because even in Dark Souls, a lot of people can play Dark Souls with a sword and shield and block and make your attacks and play a very slow, calculated playstyle. I was never that type of person on those games. I always wanted to kind of play on the offense, so Bloodborne really catered to my playstyle, and that's one element of why I love the game so much. On top of that are the weapons, which are much more unique than what had come before. They're called trick weapons in Bloodborne, and they have multiple functions, and as a whole, the weapons themselves are very unique. You do have like large axes, you have swords of course, and you have like the occasional like bow-like weapon. But how the weapons change in their trick/modified state makes them very unique and very fun to use. And like every weapon in the game feels different because of that. And that adds to the replay value of the game because you genuinely want to explore all these different weapons and how to use them. Another significant reason as to why Bloodborne is so unique and why I love the game so much is the art direction, which I think is completely unmatched when compared to any other game that exists. And I mean that wholeheartedly. The art direction in Bloodborne is absolutely stellar. And I am a fan of horror. I love the horror genre. And Bloodborne is such a unique horror game because at its core, it is a horror game. It's of course an action-adventure Souls game, but it is a horror game. And if you've played the game, you know what I mean. And in that sense, Bloodborne is one of the most unique horror games of all time, and the art direction contributes greatly to why this game is so mesmerizing to look at. And it's the fact that you have this gothic undertone that permeates throughout the entire game, and like I said, the game was marketed with that aesthetic that you're going to get a gothic horror game, and it fully delivers on that front. But, and it's a big but, there is something else under the surface of Bloodborne. There's something else that Bloodborne is holding up its sleeve to surprise the unsuspecting player who is experiencing it for the first time. And it's that extra element that elevates Bloodborne beyond its greatness on the surface to something truly exceptional. Now, the atmosphere in Bloodborne is dense. Every moment of the game is packed full of this foreboding, dark atmosphere. But what this game does with its genre and how it shifts through different genres and subgenres of horror is truly magnificent. Now, this is the area where I'm going to try and tread as light as possible so I avoid spoilers, because I do want to maintain as much as this experience as possible for someone that may have never played it, because this is such a key factor as to why Bloodborne generates so much awe when you experience it for the first time. But as I said prior, this game was marketed as a gothic horror game with beasts, werewolves, maybe other creatures of that ilk. And the game certainly gives you that in the first half. Now, there's a point in this game, and this all contributes to the lore. Now, the lore, when you really dive into it, and I'm not going to dive into it in this video for the sake of spoilers, but also because there's many videos, many great videos you can find on YouTube that will explain the lore in depth for you. There's plenty of like hour-long videos to watch, which I recommend, that go into the lore. And the lore of Bloodborne is so intricate and so beautifully structured and done that it adds so much substance to all the rest of the game. But what I'm gonna hone in on here, whilst trying not to spoil it, is the fact that, like I said, the game was marketed as that gothic game with beasts, and it was that for the first half. But there comes a point in Bloodborne where you realize that the game has been hiding something from you, in a quite literal sense. And once you realize what the game is hiding from you, it presents you with, in my personal opinion, one of the most strikingly unique and memorable and just genuinely shocking revelations that I've ever uncovered in a video game. And it presents you a moment that is one of the most memorable gaming moments I've ever had, when I came to the realization of what was happening in this game and where this story/lore was leading me in the world of Yharnam. This was the moment where I was loving this game. I was loving this game when I was playing this game from the start, really enjoying it, loving it. But this moment I'm describing in particular, and if you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. This is the moment where I stopped loving Bloodborne and fell in love with Bloodborne. Now, the moment I'm speaking about is the moment where you realize Bloodborne is transitioning from a gothic horror game into a Lovecraftian cosmic horror game. And it blends the two perfectly, to the point where I actually consider Bloodborne to be one of the greatest Lovecraftian works of fiction ever. Now, if you've never played Bloodborne before, you're probably thinking, well, I know what cosmic horror entails, so you have just spoiled that for me. But a lot of that reveal is within the execution. You can go into this game knowing there's cosmic horror elements to it, and you'll still get caught off guard by the execution. And it's the execution which is perfect. It's the execution which is extremely memorable. It's the execution that will absolutely floor you. And it's the execution that will likely, as it did with me, make you fall in love with the game. And there's so much more to it than just that on the surface. Saying it's going from gothic horror to cosmic horror is just scratching the surface. There's so much more to it. And I'm keeping it vague, but that was the moment when I realized Bloodborne was something truly special, unlike anything I've ever experienced. And 10 years later, there's nothing that compares to it. There's a mechanic in this game called Insight, and that is all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go into the details of it. If you've played the game, you know what that mechanic is and what it does. Very, very inventive mechanic to have in a game such as this, especially with the themes and the genres that this game is playing within. If you haven't played the game before, this Insight mechanic is almost an integral part of the shift that this game takes into cosmic horror. And the way that that mechanic plays into the rest of the game, I think, is just genius. It's completely genius. But another element of Bloodborne that I absolutely love, and this will be the last portion of Bloodborne that I'll speak about, is the enemy designs and the boss fights. Stellar. Now, like I said, the gameplay encourages you to play on the offensive, and the boss fights play into that as well. I think a lot of the boss fights are excellent. The difficulty is challenging. It's not brutally difficult. There are harder games that FromSoftware have made since, like Sekiro, but I think Bloodborne hits a real good sweet spot of being extremely challenging but not too difficult. And if I think back to launch, the biggest challenge people had with Bloodborne wasn't actually the difficulty of the game itself, it was the difficulty adapting to this aggressive playstyle that the game is presenting you. And I think it's that aspect of the game that people struggled with, and realizing that, oh, I can't sit back. If you sit back in Bloodborne, you'll get punished. You can't retreat. You have to kind of muster up courage to go forward, even if you're getting attacked heavily. You have to kind of walk into the storm and confront the enemy, even when they are battering you. And it's that which people got confused with, because it was at the time a big change from what was established with Dark Souls. And that was what caught people off guard with Bloodborne, and that is where the learning curve really was for Bloodborne. But a lot of people now are familiar with the Souls game design, especially with Elden Ring being a huge success. So I think for a lot of people, if you even are starting Bloodborne for the first time now, I think the learning curve won't be as difficult, because a lot of people will be accustomed to Elden Ring. Elden Ring in many ways is harder, but Elden Ring also does have fast-paced gameplay that allows you to play on the front foot. So I think people would have adapted to that. So I think people are primed, especially if you have played Elden Ring but you haven't played Bloodborne, you are primed to jump into Bloodborne and feel comfortable enough to play it and to enjoy it and to get on with it and to progress through it. The boss designs are incredible, and I love how the boss designs complement the subgenres that this game is playing within. And as the game progressively descends into this Lovecraftian cosmic horror, the bosses reflect that as well. And then, as I said, you do yourself a disservice if you play Bloodborne and then don't look into the lore extensively afterwards, because there is actually a great story being told under the surface of this game through the lore, and it's easy to miss because it is told through the lore itself. So that's why I recommend watching an extensive YouTube video that dives into it after you play the game, because there is so much there to chew on in terms of the narrative and the world building. I think it's just exceptionally created. The music in Bloodborne is excellent, as always with FromSoftware games. You know, FromSoftware Souls games, they all have tremendously great scores, which I think are all among the best music ever in video games. Bloodborne is no exception. But that's all I have to say on Bloodborne for today. It's the 10-year anniversary. I just wanted to speak off the cuff with no script, just about my feelings of this game, you know, the memories of this game. You know, I have such fond memories, like I said, of seeing that leaked trailer, being intrigued by it, being there for the launch, playing the game, experiencing it, understanding and then recognizing the shift that the game was taking with subgenres and how that was so impactful, and even 10 years later stands tall as one of the greatest moments in video game history for me personally, and I think in general. And how over time I started to realize, yeah, this game is not just one of my favorite video games of all time. It's a complete and utter masterpiece that is my favorite video game of all time. And if you've never played Bloodborne, you absolutely should play it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. I really appreciate it. Please hit the like button, that'll help me out a lot. And hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future videos on this channel. And get in the comments section, what are your memories of Bloodborne? And what does Bloodborne mean to you? Tell me. What was the moment you realized you loved Bloodborne? If you've never played Bloodborne, why? And are you going to now? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you once again, and I'll speak to you guys in the next video.